Hey everyone, J-Rod Plays here. Hope you guys had a good week this new season of The Witch. As you can see, I have the new season of The Witch title pulled up, and I'm going to just show you this only because you can see that I've reset my rank with the Ritual Table Vendor, and that kind of gives me a little bit of a perspective since I've already run through the entire rank, and I've done a good bit of grinding on how the new gameplay loop feels. So I'm going to make a guide showing everybody what I did, how I got there, and just kind of giving tips and tricks on what you should be doing throughout the season as you're interacting with these two new activities, being Savathun Spire and the Altars of Summoning. And so with these two activities, these two together are tied together in a gameplay loop, and they have a nice interaction where you don't necessarily have to go outside these two activities. If you wanted to just grind these two activities over and over again, you could. However, the key that you're getting for these two activities, similar to the deep dive key of last season, can be dropped in other activities, and I'll go over that as well. Now I'm going to take you guys into the new area of the H.E.L.M, where you're going to be interacting with the two new tables, and I'm going to show you guys how I got to rank 16, the loop that I followed, and give you little guides of both the Savathun Spire and the Altars of Summoning. Alright, here we are in the Athenaeum. As you can see here, I've got my 5 ritual cards. You got your 4 on the initial stand, and then you got the extra 1, Blades, which is actually probably one of my favorite ones. This one is the one where you get rapid kills and you get heavy ammo, and it's just basically you're running around with your heavy out the whole time when you're doing altars. Now, from the cards that we have, 4 of them you're going to get through just following the quest line, the main quest line, and the 5th one will open up as you start to explore the Savathun Spire and the altars. I don't remember exactly when it dropped. I can go back kind of through the footage, and if I finally see exactly what I did to get that 4th one to drop, then I'll kind of give that as a specific. But basically just playing the story, going through your grind, it'll drop eventually as long as you're kind of doing the same rotation between the Spire and the altars back and forth. J-Rod from the future here. It appears that the Blades card was that 4th card that I didn't have then, that I do have now, and it appears that that 5th card comes from either Savathun Spire, completing that with a key, or it's going to be the very first opaque card that you get in the vendor. Because when I came back, I hadn't actually checked the lectern first. I opened up the vendor, as you can see here, and then the first thing I grabbed was that opaque card. Then when I turn around, as you can see, I have the 3 bounties already, so I've done 3 quests, and I turn around and I have, boom, I have got a 5th card there. I turn that over, and that's going to be the Blades, and I pick that up, and I start to work on that quest line. Blades is that additional one. That one's going to be going and doing combatant kills with melee swords and glaives. Once you get that done, then you get that really nice perk of having the heavy ammo drop, and I would definitely go after this one because it's so really nice. That card is so awesome to get whenever you're doing a powerful, because you can just run around with your heavy out. You don't even have to reload. Once you run out of your clip, if I'm, for example, using a machine gun a lot of the times, once I run out of my machine gun clip, I just go and run over one of those heavy bricks. It refills you and maxes you out again. If you're running rockets, for example, you can do the same thing with rockets. It's just really nice. Now I'm going to get back to J-Rod from the past so we can continue the guide. And there is a connection between them that you'll do in order to get that done. And the reason that these cards are important again is because they also expand on what you can do with the ritual table. During my reset, I've ended up with 5 major arcana, and it's theorized and probably proven at this point, since nobody has more than 5, that this is going to be like a weekly drop. We'll get 1 a week as we complete the main story itself, the main story quest. And if everybody's wondering where to find the main story quest, right now they added this new little featured quest. So this is going to be the seasonal quest, The Bladed Path. And right now I'm step 451. Next week it'll start to update and it'll have new steps for you. As you follow along the step line, you'll probably unlock more of the major arcana. And the minor arcana are not that important. They end up just being little one-shot things that you click on, and you have to make sure you click on them twice, just like the major arcana. The other guide that I made where you acquire the arcana, you have to make sure you click on it a second time to actually pick it up, and you'll start seeing that the Sisters quest will update over here on the right side, and it'll give you some objectives on how to do the things on the card. Major arcana, they change the ritual table for you so that you have some additional things that you can do. When you start out, the ritual table doesn't have any bounties, and so I was like wondering, like, why is there any bounties this season? That's kind of weird. That's going to make things a little more grindy, not having seasonal bounties that you can grind. And even though there isn't any repeatable bounties yet, those are probably going to be further along. The seasonal bonus, getting that key chests that give you additional whisper cards, that helps you along when you're picking up some of the additional cards and getting these additional bonuses. The new daily bounty, though, is the most important thing to me because that gives you that additional source of daily reputation to help you get along that first set that actually rewards you with lesser cards. Once you get that first reset in and you get the ship, really there's not a whole lot else to look forward to in that. And so that's kind of a shame. I was hoping that there was going to be more cards and things that we could grind out, to kind of fill out the rest of this here. But you just have to wait until the week rolls over, and then some more of these will pop up. There's got to be like a limit on how many that you can get per week, because these are not necessarily the ones that you would pick up from the ritual table. So there's got to be a limit on these cards, and then these, of course, are just going to be found as you do certain actions in the rotation between. Also, of course, these are going to be how you get the major cards that you take with you during the encounter. So during the Spire and then during the Altar of Summoning, you can actually pay attention and back up a little bit and see there's a card floating there in the air. That card is going to have a symbol on it. And a lot of people have been saying, let me just kind of revisit this real quick, that there's no really good way to know what the card does. Like Fallout, for example, made a video where he was kind of like a minor complaint. I wish you could see what the activity was and help remember. And yes, there isn't like specifically spelled out what it is, but there is a little symbol, as you notice, on top of the card, and that can help remind you, just kind of remember what the symbol looks like. That'll be like, oh yeah, okay, so Blades, for example, has a picture of heavy ammo. That means you're going to get heavy ammo when you kill things. When you come over here and you're looking at the Harbinger, if you look up, it says final blows have a chance to create an explosion, damaging nearby targets. And so you'll see that there's just like a little symbol of ammo and like arrows going to the side, which I guess can signify explosions. I felt like they could probably do a little bit better with that symbol. That's not super clear. This one's very clear, though. It's like a little heal symbol, and rapidly defeating combatants has a chance to regenerate health and shields, so that's pretty easy to understand. This one here is like a little lightning symbol, and this one probably should be switched with this one, because this one you would say, okay, bunch of bullets, maybe that's the one that has the increasing damage with each final blow, and then this little lightning would be the explosion, so they probably should have flipped those. But essentially you can remember that the lightning is going to charge your ammo, and so as you get kills you get damage with each final blow, and that probably resets upon death. And then, of course, the special ammo, final blows have a chance to draw special ammo. That's easy to understand. So there is reminders, and there is ways that you back up and you look at the card. Because from the back, they all look the same. So when you activate them and you turn around, they're all going to look like this. But you have to just run to this side of them that are floating there in the air next to where you start the encounter. And you can see, okay, this is it. And so that's how you know what you're getting whenever you're picking up these cards. And as you progress along, you're going to get your first two. Once you acquire your first two, and then you're going to get those two objectives, you're going to do those objectives. That's going to progress your story quest, make you go into a different activity, and then you'll get two more. The most important thing again with these is that you get new daily bounties as you do some of these. So as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 daily bounties, and those daily bounties are going to help kind of every time you pick one up push you further along quickly across the ranks. And so right now you can see that the rank's only 125 with these bounties. I believe they're 50 apiece, if I remember correctly, or 25 apiece. No, they're 25 apiece. So 25 apiece, you're looking at 100 additional ranks every single day, or 100 additional reputation every single day that can push you toward each rank going forward. So even if you just played daily and you went out there and you got your few hundred rank from running a keyed Savathun Spire, for example, then you would get the opening the witch's chest, you could get the precision damage, and you can get the sword glaive damage, and then you would go and run 1 Altars of Sorrow if you get another key to drop, or if you save some keys, or if you picked them up from somewhere in here, or your minor cards, and then that would be your day. You would just get out there, knock out these two, knock out some of that, and you get a nice little chunk to move yourself along. And since there's really nothing after the reset, there's really no reason for you to like really push to try to get that reset done early. The minor cards that you get, just like an exotic engram or an extra key, most of them are going to be these witches engrams, and so it's not a big deal. I've still got engrams waiting until I can reliably get the focusing done. I've got 50 engrams after going through this, and I spent a few here and there. I grabbed some armor pieces that I needed that I didn't have. I grabbed 3 of these rockets, and I still have 50 engrams, so I'm not in a hurry to grab a bunch of engrams. yes, it's nice to try to push to get these unlocks, but I'm kind of saving them up because I know that the unlocks are going to drop either way as I'm grinding through some of the activities. And so right now, the way I have things set up is I have my main build, and then next to my main build, I've got just these empty veiled tithes robes. And as I'm completing the activity, once the activity is getting ready to complete, I just do a quick swap real fast since the loadouts are busted right now, and then I'll swap back once I'm done and tithed and I've got my additional chance at getting an offering, and then that's kind of how I handle the season. Now let's go into the offerings. So your offerings are going to drop from the activities. You get them from both. You'll get them from the Savathun Spire, and then you will get some from doing a complete run of the Altars of Summoning. And a complete run is not just one altar. It's like multiple altars depending on how you break them down. If you have a powerful offering and you complete 2 of these, this will either fully complete depending on how well you do, or almost fully complete your kind of like a progress bar, for example, like Dares of Eternity and other things where you know how far along you are in the activity. And then you'll just need to do either a robust offering, or if you just have like a little bit, a feeble offering. You're going to hardly ever do a feeble offering, though. Most people will come in with a powerful offering or 2, and then same thing with the robust offerings. And so what I've been doing is just dropping my 2 and then getting a robust in there, and you actually get more reputation if you're the one that actually does the deposit. So some people will sit there and wait for people to do the deposit, which is fine if you just don't have them and you want to do the altars. Okay, somebody else with a little more time would be the one to pick up the offerings, but the person that does drop the offering happens to get more reputation because of that. So that helps speed me along, because I was always the one doing the offerings since I was running this pretty much non-stop, trying to figure out what's on the other side of that reset and try to get everything unlocked this week that I can. So that's how the offerings work. You're going to get them from just playing the 2 activities, and you get additional ones if you wait on the Savathun Spire. Once you get the chest, wait until the activity completes and you can start handing out commendations. That's where you'll see some additional offerings drop. And then on the Altars of Summoning, once Eris is done and you've picked up her chest, sometimes you'll see some additional offerings show up in your loot table as you go through all the loot that shows up on the right. And so that's kind of how the armors come into play. And from my experience, I wasn't wearing them, like during the activity. I just threw them on right before everything completed, and it counted. So once I have loadouts back, once they fix the loadouts here in a week or 2, I'll just have a loadout like this, and then I'll just hit the button, boom, and then I'll hit the button to go back to the loadout that I was on originally. But in the meantime, I've been using Destiny Item Manager like we used to before we had loadouts in the game, so it's kind of back to the old trusty, and so far so good. And so now that we've been talking about the offerings and the tiers being, tier 3 powerful, tier 2 robust, and tier 1 feeble offering, there's also the keys. The keys look just like this. They look like the deep dive keys, and if you go into the ritual table, you'll see that they have the little witch symbol on them called the witch's key. And the witch's keys can be picked up by completing pretty much any main activity. A lot of people are getting them from core list activities, for example. So if you're doing your Vanguard for the week, if you're just playing some Crucible, you can pick up quite a bit just running through trials, trying to get your flawless. If you're doing it whether solo or in a group, any activity completion has a chance to drop these, so you can stack those up pretty good doing something like that. Me, the way that I got the most of mine was during the activities. So for example, I would run altars until I got a key, and then I would go and I would spin that in Savathun Spire, and I would come back and run altars again until I would get a key, and then I would spin that again in altars in the next setup, because that was how the bounties were set up. So you would get this knocked out first, and then you go back to the altars. Altars will drop a key for you when doing your completion and your tithe, and then from there you could just go and do another altars, and then that was it. You were done with the loop, and you can go and do something else, or you can come back to it either way. I'm not sure if the playlist for the exotic is going to drop it. I still have to do a presage mission. I'm just going to go solo that, because that's how I always did it back when it was in season. I would just solo it and just knock it out. It's not that long. And of course, if you don't want to have to solo it, that's fine. I just enjoyed soloing it. I enjoyed going through and completing the mission, and that last boss fight is fun whenever you plan everything out right and you're pushing the boss and getting him into his right place. So that's going to be what I'll do on the presage mission. But in this case, those are the 2 things that I wanted to mention, was that these are the offerings, this is what they look like, and the keys look like this, just like the Witch Queen symbol above them and said. I've already spent mine, so I don't have any specifically here to show you, but that's the inventory back and forth. You go and you get these offerings from doing the Savathun Spire, or you'll get them as an additional tithe as part of the altar, and then you'll come back into the altars of sorrow and you'll spin your powerful ones. When you get a key, then you're going to go back into Savathun Spire unless you're spinning that key in the altar so that you can get that bounty done. But that was my kind of cycle that I would do. I would do the Savathun Spire to get the offerings, especially the powerful ones. They tend to drop there. Come back to the altars of summoning, and then when I get a key, I would go back to Savathun Spire unless I needed to spin one at the altar. And that was kind of the most efficient way that I saw to do things, was to then just go back and forth, back and forth. It also kept things fresh. The altars can get a little boring if you're just going through them over and over and over again. There's only so many encounters you can do this week. There'll be more next week. And then with the Savathun Spire, same thing. There's only so much that you can kind of go through and say, okay, I'm kind of done, I'm bored of this because I've done so many of these in a row. So kind of going back and forth between them kept them fresh long enough for me to get the reset done and push through and get that taken care of. And so this is pretty much the way that you go about doing these two back to back to back. You'll interact with the lectern. The lectern will give you cards that will interact with the ritual table, and you just kind of go back and forth as you're doing these quests and these quest objectives. The first two will have you actually go into the activities and complete them in the activities, and the second two will take you off activity. One of them is going to be to do the altars of sorrow in the moon. And then the other one, that has you do some public events. If I remember correctly, a heroic public event is worth 2, and a non-heroic is worth 1, and you need to do a total of 5 points. So 2 heroic public events and 1 non-heroic, or 5 non-heroic public events, that is. And so that's how I did the 2. These cards, though, are important, these Empowered Unlocking. One of these cards is available as kind of like a secret hidden card over here by this little guy. These little worms happen to run away normally when you get close to them, the Yoda worms, and so people have been giving them names. Jeff, like my name is Jeff, was from Fallout. Me, I think he looks a little bit more like Yoda, so I'm going to go with Grogu. So Grogu over here is guarding a secret. Back here, there's a card that you can pick up, and once you pick that card up, it's going to unlock something useful for you. So if you're still kind of new to the season and you haven't put a whole lot of time in, it's a nice card to grab early. These cards that we find that look like that are going to turn into these green cards, and these are actually like minor Arcana Whisper cards that are useful. These here are just like material cards and things like that, but these are useful cards. And so this one here, the Empowered Unlocking, using your Witch's Keys will award additional Witch's Engrams. That's the card that will pop up once you get that card back there, and this will help your progress. And so instead of just getting like 20 or 30 engrams by the time you reset, as you saw, I was at 50, and then I spent some, so it would have been much more. Now, these cards here you'll get as part of playing as well, and I think one of these cards is in the actual ritual table path when you're picking up all the rewards before you can do your reset. And so this one starts out giving you an additional deep sight guaranteed from focusing, and I've been spending these on the rocket launcher because I've been interested in what that rocket launcher can do. And then as you get in each one, additionally, you get one more deep sight go. And so these are nice. I imagine there's going to be more along the same path, so you'll probably only get like 1 or 2 deep sight weapons worth, but it's still a nice little help. Although I would prefer that these reset on a weekly basis, and so we'll find out. On Tuesday I'll come back in here, I'll take a look, and I'll see if I can get maybe 3 deep sights available, and that would be nice if it reset weekly, or if you could get 3 more each week. Again, would be a nice little boost. We'll see how they handle that. The next thing I'm going to cover is the actual activities. I'm going to go through a Savathun Spire and just kind of how that works, and I'm going to also go through a little bit of the Altars of Sorrow. I'm going to make a full Altar of Sorrow each encounter guide so you can see what each encounter is, how to handle the encounter, and what the objectives of the encounter are, because I've seen a lot of blueberries who have really failed hard at grasping what the encounters are, or they're just worried about their bounties. So those are the 2 scenarios. You have somebody in there with a glaive just trying to get their glaive kills, and they don't care if you complete your powerful, but it's worth it, and it's in their best interest to complete the actual powerful encounter within the time. So it's kind of sad that they don't do that, because you lose a lot of progress, you lose a lot of your rep that you could be getting for free, and you're already in the encounter, so why not just complete it? But some people just have a little bit of problems with objectives. They just want to go in there and they're a little bit mindless, and they don't play the objectives, or they don't handle the spawns correctly. They get a little tunnel vision, and so because of that, you lose sometimes your encounters just because you don't have the right people. And the great thing about altars is that people are joining again and again and again. So if you don't like your crew and you don't care about losing progress, just go into a new altar, try to find 2 new players that maybe work well with you, and then try to hold on to those guys so that you can actually kind of continue on with them and spend as much time with them. I think the most time I spent with the same 2 people was maybe like an hour and a half. We just kept bowling through the encounters, and we were getting them done in a few minutes apiece. And they knew what was up. They knew exactly what they were going to be doing and what role they were going to be doing. And so I would just fill in and try to make sure I was doing my best, in helping them, because they knew exactly what was their objective. And we just, since we kind of just already worked together really well without saying anything, we all kind of did our own thing. And then when it came time, boss time, everybody knew what was up, and we would just melt the boss. So do get lucky every now and then, and you get a good group. And if you do get that good group, hopefully they're in it for the long haul. Well, let's go into the Savathun Spire, and then from there we'll go into the altars. So with Savathun Spire, if it's your first time doing it and somebody skips your intro, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, Bungie did the thing again where it lets somebody skip even though the other 2 haven't voted to skip. My very first intro got skipped by somebody who was just in a hurry trying to knock these out, and it was just unfortunate because that person was just running around with a sword flying, not doing a whole lot, and just they had already done it one time. I kept getting kicked myself for like the first 15-20 minutes with error codes until I was finally stable, and that stable run was with somebody who'd already done it a few times and they were just trying to burn through it. So that's kind of how it could be. If I was on a run like that and I pushed somebody, I apologize, of course, because again, it's already been days through, and now everybody's voting to skip. But in the beginning, for the first day and a half, 2 days, you kind of want to not vote to skip, just because it might be somebody's first time seeing that sequence, and so just keep that in mind. But me myself, now that I'm going in there, I try not to skip, but sometimes you're just in a hurry. And for me, then what I'm going to do is try to push ahead to make sure that people don't pull me into the next encounter and mess up getting the chest, because I'll go through the 2 secret chests during this guide and show you how to acquire them, and they are worth it to keep getting, even though you only get loot one time from them and you get your offerings one time from them. It's worth picking them up because they still give you reputation, and it's just a little bit of reputation, but still it all adds up. It's additional 20 rep between the 2 chests as you go through each time you run, and so that'll turn out to knock out a whole rank after a little while of doing this, back and forth and back and forth. And so when you start the Spire, you're going to pick up your staff, and then from there you're going to go through a little ritual to then open the door. And when you do so, you'll notice that one of your cards will spawn behind you. You can go back and check what it is, and you'll see at the bottom it'll tell you that you drew the card. So if you have a good memory, you know exactly what it is. Like if you get blades, of course, we know it's heavy ammo because that's the good one. That's what I can remember. But if it's one that I don't really pay attention to, and I just want to double check, you can just run back and check the card just like I showed in the other video, and then look at the symbol. And so once you do that, you're into the main room, and in the main room you'll have 3 different rituals, I believe, if I remember correctly. One of them is popping crystals through a little barrier. You just run into the barrier and you can either shoot or punch the crystals. Punching them will one-shot them, but the tracking on the punching has been really infuriating because sometimes if an enemy is close by, even though your screen is centered onto the crystal, it'll put your fist and it'll pull it down on the way to the right or to the left, and then you whiff on your melee and you got to go back in the bubble and hit it again if you're kind of in a hurry. And so that's the first one. That's kind of be like the Void Keepers one. That's going to spawn ogres. The second encounter in here that you can get is the crystals that are both either arc or solar. So one being solar, you kill the solar loosened hive, which is going to be the acolyte, and from there then you pick up a solar crystal, which will do damage to you over time as you're walking through it. If you have a warlock on your team, let them grab it because they can just drop their rift, their healing rift, and then heal through that. What I was doing is I was dropping my rift to pick up an arc buddy. That way, as I'm walking through all the little thrall pushing me, my arc buddy is killing them. Especially if I'm amplified, it kills them very quickly. And then I can just deposit the crystal again, and by the time I get to the deposit the crystal, I usually have another rift with my build. I just drop another rift because you're really low health and things can pick you off from there. It's an easy way to die. And so that's the way I handle the solar crystal. The arc crystals are easy. The arc crystal, you just punch the main crystal. That gives you a charge that you then have to use to get over to another crystal that's dormant. You punch that crystal and that'll activate it. And then you can punch that same crystal if you happen to lose a little progress or you take too long. You can go back to a crystal that you've activated. It stays activated. You can punch it again to get the charge that'll allow you to do the other 3 crystals. Once you've done all the crystals, they're going to explode, and then from there you'll get a arc Lucent Hive, which is going to be the wizard, and then you kill the wizard, repeat that. I want to say you do those 3 times, and then you get like a boss in the center. Once you kill that boss in the center, then from there it'll open you up a chute that takes you to the top. Just make sure that you're oriented properly so that when you get spit out of it, you end up landing where you're supposed to. Sometimes the chute will like turn off midway and drop you down. You have to go back up it again. So just kind of hover there and make sure to activate your jumps, because they've done it to where now it'll reactivate after a few seconds without killing you. In the past, that chute would probably only activate once and then you'd fall straight to your death. So once you're going through the chutes after this, that's where the first chest is located. And you'll see that as you get through the obstacles, you're going to enter a room with 3 swinging sensors that have spikes on them. And those, when you hop over them, you'll land and see that the very first symbol is being held by one of the statues in the room. And so the statues and the symbols, the way that they work is that you have to shoot them with the corresponding element. And so that could be anything from like heavy ammo to an energy weapon. And you can stagger your weapons if you want. After a while, I got kind of bored of having to always just go into my menu and switch between weapons. I was running 3 SMGs. I was running an Arc SMG as my primary on my Arc class to take care of Monochromatic Maestro, for example. And then I was switching between a Solar SMG and a Void SMG for the chests. Then I started running like a glaive, like a Void glaive, and a heavy solar. You can see that in the footage here. And so what I was doing was just glaving the first orb, and then you go up and you jump a little jumping puzzle. As you land, you'll see a barrier and then another round symbol above the barrier. You can shoot that with a void. And then if you look down off to your right, what you'll see is another symbol, but this one happens to be solar. So you have to either switch to your solar, or in my case, I just switch to my heavy and I shoot that. And a lot of people still don't know how to do this. So you'll have guardians that are running ahead of you that will miss this. And if you're not quick enough, they'll pull you sometimes. They'll activate the next section and that'll pull you. So then you'll miss it. So you have to be quick. Make sure you get in there and activate it for them. Try to get out ahead of people so that way they don't miss it. A lot of times I would get out ahead of people and they'd be running past and they would hear the chest opening, or they would see the little pop-up that they got a secret chest, and then they'll come back and get it. And some of them are thankful, some of them don't even know what's going on. So it's just something that I did every time as a habit, just to make sure that nobody that was with me missed that achievement, that triumph, and they also could take advantage of getting that first drop for the week and getting that additional reputation. So I just did that. Personally, I wanted my 10 rep, but it was more helpful for them to get their rep and get their chest as well. So it was a nice thing to do for people that are with me. Now, once you get done with this, you're going to go into another room that's going to be either one of the 3 elements. It'll be solar, void, or arc. A little orb in the center will be glowing. Careful not to touch that because they all have their own effects and they can do a bunch of damage to you. And the theme with these rooms is you're going to kill a Lucent Hive that's the same element of whatever orb is in the middle. And so again, solar acolyte, void titan, and the, or should I say Void Knight, right? And then the Arc Wizards. And once you kill the main Wizard, Titan, or Acolyte in those scenarios, they then push to the next section, the next mechanic, and that'll be the same mechanic you were doing from the prior room, carrying the solar crystal to its destination, breaking the void crystals that are inside of the bubbles, or charging the arc crystals by punching the main crystal and then running it over to the other arc crystals and charging them up until they explode. Once that happens, then you get another Lucent Hive. You kill that Lucent Hive, you kill a bunch of ogres that'll spawn along with it, and then that'll move you into the next mechanic. Now, there is some encounters in which you're not doing those 3 things. There is one additional mechanic that can be randomly chosen, is that there's some plates, some activation plates, and you stand on the activation plate long enough as you're killing things to activate the plate faster. And the 3 relics that I've seen are the Arc, in this case going to give you the staff that you would get inside of the Psyops Battlegrounds, so the same staff that we would have that allows you to teleport, that we would attack Savathun with through immunity in the Psyops Battleground Moon. So you get that staff. You can actually get the Scythe that you would get on the Leviathan, so that scythe still works the same way. Your light attack throws out little scythes, your heavy attack will slam the ground and cause an AoE, and that will help also ignite if you have some stacks built up, ignite bigger targets. You can also get close to targets and hit them with the scythe, doing damage with the scythe itself on top of the scythe you throw out. And the third artifact that I've never seen before is kind of similar to the artifacts that you would get from the Vex, the little laser, but in this case it doesn't do as much damage as Quick, It's a little slower, but it's just basically a void beam. You focus that void beam, it does give you a pretty good amount of super as you're doing that damage. And that one, it's not really good for ad clear. That one's really good for focusing on like a big target that's easy to hit. That way you can get your super maxed out, drop it, pop your super, pick it back up again, and generate more super. So that's kind of the best use for that one. And so once you've done with those three, what you're going to do next is you're going to end up going to another portal. This portal will take you to a room with a bunch of hive symbols in the center, 3 to be exact. Those 3 will have a set pattern, and your job is to look for the door that matches those 3 symbols. And just remember those 3 symbols because you'll use them again further down as you're going through the jumping puzzle. So the first door will take you to a jumping puzzle room, which will then take you to a set of lifts that take you through some obstacles. Once you get through all of those, you're going to be in a room with a bunch of columns that you have to jump across. This is going to be the second secret chest location. And so here, what you'll do is stop at one of the main platforms as you go through. Look up, you'll see that there's 4 symbols hanging, 2 void this week and 2 solar. I imagine those will maybe change next week. And you'll just shoot them with the corresponding elemental weapon. You don't have to do it from the bottom. I like to do it from here because I can clearly see that I've activated them. And when I was doing it with my glaive, for example, I was shooting the 2 solar with my long range machine gun and then running through the door that takes me up there, and then I would just look down and glaive the other 2, and that still activates it just fine. So you can go and teleport up there and shoot them from close range, or you can shoot them from underneath. As long as you hit them once and you see the damage numbers, it'll activate pretty reliably. Also here, you'll be looking around for the door that matches the 3 symbols before in the rooms before, and once you pop into that door, that'll take you up onto the pillars where these symbols are hanging below. And once you cross those 4 into the next section, that's going to be where the chest is on the right. You can claim the chest and then pop your rally banner so that you have ammo for the final boss encounter. Now here too, it's also interesting to mention that as you're going along and you're dropping down into the doors, once somebody activates one of the doors and activates it correctly, I believe all the other doors, the other 3 doors, become a teleportation to the next area. And it might work the same way with the big door too, that's like sitting on top of these pillars that are kind of out in the open. Once somebody activates that one, if you jump into any of them, it might also teleport you up. Normal behavior for these, if you're the first one through, it'll kill you if you pick the wrong door, and you just have to try to come back and pick the right door if you forget the symbol setup. So once you've done that and you're in the boss area, you're going to get a couple different boss encounters. The ones that I can remember offhand are going to be the boss encounter where you're fighting against a boss that's similar, a Scorn boss that's similar to one of the Scorn bosses from Forsaken, the one that has the after images. You kill those after images and then the boss is by himself. What he'll do then is he'll pop a smoke barrier to try to make it hard to hit him, teleport around as a bunch of ads spawn. And the ad spawning are helpful because if you happen to have a card that gives you a lot of rapid kill effects, they're easy to activate those effects from. After you've killed all the copies, you can stand in an activation circle. Once that one is fully charged by killing enemies, the boss will then respawn, and it's kind of a rinse and repeat until he dies. He's got 2 phases, and he's got like 1 health gate, and then once you kill him, don't forget to switch to your gear so you can get the additional offerings, open the chest, and then you can go and do the altars. Now the other encounter that I can remember is going to be fighting 3 Lucent Hive, 1 of each, so 1 Knight, 1 Acolyte, and 1 Wizard. With that one, you just have to be careful because sometimes a Shrieker will spawn either in the center of the room or one of the sides of the room. It's very powerful, so make sure you save your super for those so you can knock them out quickly. That way it doesn't wipe your team. And the goal with that one is you're going to fight first one of them by themselves, kill that one, and then you're going to get a corresponding mechanic depending on which one the first one to activate is. So if it's the solar one, you're going to be doing the carry the solar rock. If it's the arc one, you're going to be punching arc crystals and activating them until they shatter. And then the Hive Knight, you're running around punching crystals that are protected by orbs, so that's going to be the void mechanic. And once you've done that, the other 2 Lucent Hive will come down. You'll fight 2 at the same time while killing all the other ads. And then after killing those, again, don't forget to crush the ghost. You'll have completed the encounter. You can go up, don't forget to switch your armor, and grab the chest. So that's the second one. And those are the 2 that I remember doing this week. They're probably going to have one additional or two additional next week. I can't remember based on the triumphs. And so you'll see some more encounters next week. And I'll probably make a quick guide for those next week instead of making a whole brand new guide like this one here. Now that we've covered Savathun Spire, let's go over to just a quick overview of the altars. Because I'm going to make a separate altars video, and I'll post the link here once it's up. That way you can have each of the encounters mechanics and kind of go in depth in there. I'm just going to cover just like a rough, quick mechanic and how the altars work, and a nice little trick as well to start the altars off with a little bit of a boost. And so I'll see you over there. So you start out the altars doing the ritual of induction. The way this ritual works is people will stand on the pads, begin the ritual channeling, and after a timer, it'll actually start. And once everybody's actually clicked on it together too, the timer will end immediately. And what this does is if you do the right symbols, and just a quick overview, you'll see that the symbols floating all have some kind of a pattern, and the three symbols that are different, if all three of those symbols are chosen, or if two of the three symbols, if there's just two of you in there, are chosen, and you start that, you get a Lucent Blessing. What the Lucent Blessing does is it gives you ammo, it fills your bar all the way, your super bar, and you don't have to worry about running around and collecting the orbs because you've done the pattern correctly. So it's a nice boost to begin with. If you're not doing it correctly and people are just picking randomly, some orbs will drop down, so you get a little bit of orbs, and then you just have to wait to get ammo from actually activating the encounter itself. And so once you've done that, it'll give you one of the sides to go over to. You can activate your Sparrow and Sparrow over there quickly so that you can be the one to dunk and get your reputation if you need your reputation. If not, just take your time and let somebody else dunk so they can get their rep, or you can drop your powerfuls for them if they don't have any powerfuls. Now to start the ritual, you'll notice that there's going to be the 4 altars there. It's interesting that there's 4, so there's probably one more level of difficulty we're not seeing just yet. The 2 on the left are Tier 1 and Tier 2, and then the one on the right, closest to the arena, is going to be your Tier 3 powerful. Once you've dunked either Tier 1, 2, or 3, you're going to see a staff, the staff that we use to tithe, floating in front of you. Just go up to it and activate it. Anybody can activate it, it's fine, it doesn't necessarily change you getting a buff or not, but you do want to run over to it and pick up the orbs that drop if your super is not full from doing the ritual. And you want to try to top your super off, and it's important because the encounters, a lot of them will begin with very, very strong opponents that you want to try to clear out as the encounter starts so that they don't get out of hand later on when it's DPS time. And that's a big deal. A lot of people don't really pay attention to the order of things, or at least the fact that there is an order of things. They just kind of run around and shoot things. They don't kind of think through, all right, what's the best tactics that I should use to approach this? And they don't pay attention that if another guardian is like actually like struggling and doing something by themselves, they're like, hey, let me go over there and help them with that. Or hey, let's stick together so that we have a better chance of surviving this enemy dense encounter. Especially if you're doing, again, the powerful. And you can see that you're doing the powerful, so it's not like they don't know. They would have to be really, really oblivious to the upper left-hand corner of the screen that continues to update things to not notice that, hey, we're doing a powerful summon, I should probably bring my A game so that this person's powerful summon isn't wasted, right? If it's not your own. And if it's your own, obviously you want to make sure you bring the A game so that yours isn't wasted. There's going to be these changes in the encounters, and there's all the encounters have some type of a time gating type of thing where they're going to push you into a different portion of the encounter. And once you've satisfied those objectives, and again, I'll go in each one of them in a different video, it's going to push to the next section. And since, again, they're really enemy dense, a lot of these enemies do a bunch of damage, so I do recommend having some type of resist on and having very good survivability as part of the class that you choose to go in there with, or at least good enough. And you want to make sure that you're focusing mainly on the big enemies. So like the Lucent Hive, you want to make sure to clear them out because they're going to be a nuisance if you don't clear them out. You want to make sure that you're not getting too far ahead of your teammates, so that way your teammates aren't getting inundated by the enemies that you've spawned behind you. So if you spawn something big, make sure to stay and help take care of it. And then the next thing you want to also make sure is that you're not resurrecting your teammates in a bad spot. The timer to resurrect is really short. I think it's like 10 seconds. And so if they're stuck with like with 2 Shriekers and the boss and like 2 Lucent Hive, don't just run in there and like pop a rift, res them, and run away because they're going to be dead before their feet hit the floor. So be very cognizant of that. The best thing you can do in that case is go back to where you spawn and then use that as an opportunity to regroup and get everybody together. So now that you've done the altar and you've kind of gone through the different stages, you're going to get a completion bar on the upper left-hand side to show how much tithing you are still needing in order to complete a full Altars of Summoning. And once you complete that bar, you'll know that you're complete because you'll be hearing dialogue from H.E.L.M, and she'll teleport in front of you. As she does so, she'll lift up into the air, and then she'll receive the tithing that you've generated. And so that is how you know, okay, I'm done with one full Altar of Summoning. The chest will spawn, and if you have a key, you'll get those additional rewards. If not, you'll have a chance to get a key. So that's a nice little feedback loop that they've created where you can get a key from either the Spire or from the Altar of Summoning and use it in the other one. And that's what I usually do again, is I'll get a key and I'll go over to the other one, and then I'll complete that and then come back. And so that's the way that you want to do the altars. You want to make sure that you're doing the ritual to get started, so you start out with a full super. You want to make sure that you fall back in the beginning and survey what the actual encounter is, so you don't get yourself caught in a bad situation. Be mindful of your teammates, where they are, actually trying to do the objectives, and I'll go again into detail with that in the other video, and then you'll succeed pretty much every time. It's kind of hard if you're doing things appropriately to fail, but it's also very easy to fail with people who have no clue what they're doing. And since it's really early in the season, there's not a whole lot of guides out like I'll be making, they're going to have no clue what they're doing. But as time goes on, I think as the awareness goes on, you'll see people getting more adept at handling each of the encounters and the things to avoid, and that should lessen over time. But if you have a set fire team, that's not a problem. That's really just going to be for people like me who play solo a lot, and so that's just part of it. That's part of surviving with LFGs and randoms, and that just, it makes the game interesting too, though, because sometimes you could be the hero and you can clutch it up, or sometimes somebody will come out of nowhere and save you. So it's a pretty cool little bit of randomness that I enjoy in there, and I still got it done even with people that were really bad. So it's not a problem. You'll get it done eventually. Just keep grinding at it, and don't let it get to you too much if the blueberries happen to fail you. I've seen all kinds of posts on the forums, people complaining about how bad blueberries are, and then all the replies are like, "You do know how blueberries are in this game? How long have you been playing? Like, that's why we call them blueberries." Kind of a funny thing that happens every season with the activities, people complaining about stuff. Like, I just read one recently where they were talking about the deep dives, and they were referring to the ability for people to click the ritual, the little ritual that gives you the boost, the Lucent Blessing, to be equal to the Tolan ball that was showing up in the deep dives. And there was people in the comments, I don't know if they were trolling or if they were serious, but they were like, "What do you mean there was a Tolan ball in deep dives?" So somebody either never knew what a pressure trial was, or they're just being funny, which it's a pretty good joke. It made me laugh. So anyway, so that's how you do the Altars of Sorrow. Now I'm just going to recap a few things on the season, just kind of go over that, and that should be pretty much it for the video. So far in the season, I'm actually pretty happy with the way that things turned out this season. I was really not expecting something so interesting and the lore to be so interesting, and just having something that seems really intense going on, especially with the idea that, Ikora, of course, is never happy with anything, but that Eris Morn has a chance to be fully converted into a hive god, that at that point, what is she going to do with that power if she's powerful enough to rival Xivu Arath? What are we going to be able to do to stop her if she does get that strong? Are we ever going to be able to stop her? Is she going to join the dark side like she's done so in all the other timelines and become the main enemy? There's a lot that could be going on in this, although I don't think that they'll go there. That seems too easy of a path for them to take. I think Eris will be okay in the end, but it's just such a cool setup this season where we're now making our own hive god, using a little section of Savathun's throne world to empower Eris to help us in our fight with Xivu Arath, and for her to get her vengeance. Essentially, her hive worm and her hive god status is the hive god of vengeance. So anytime we do anything that brings her revenge upon those that have done wrong to her, that's how she gets strong. Similarly to how Savathun is trickery and Xivu Arath is war. So really cool. Also really cool to think about the idea is that now there's, again, 3 hive gods, and so that initial setup with the 3 hive gods is being returned to 3 hive gods. What could happen if Oryx somehow gets revived, and now we have this, Oryx versus Eris versus Xivu situation if Xivu happens to make it past this season? It kind of feels like they're going to end Xivu Arath in the season, which would be a shame because you would want her to have her own expansion and stuff and kind of have her own raid and things like that, but I don't think they're going to do that. So, unfortunately, that's going to be how it's going to be. She's going to end in the season probably. It is what it is. You got to get her out of the way for the final shape. If she's still lingering around in the final shape, that would be kind of an awkward thing to have done unless they make her a dungeon boss for the final shape somehow. So anyway, it's hard to tell where Bungie's going, especially with the final shape reveal being a little bit light on details, kind of not going in the places that we were hoping they would go. People obviously were a little bit sour on some of the reused assets. I understand the way that they were trying to explain the Pale Heart, giving us a little bit of a nostalgia trip, and that's how they want the final shape to be, is like one big Destiny 1 through Destiny 2 nostalgia trip. But we'll see. We'll have to wait. I'm going to reserve my judgment until I actually play through it. I may really enjoy it, but I too was kind of in that camp where I started seeing like the original tower. It's kind of cool, and then I started seeing like all the original planets and stuff start to be represented. And while that is cool to play through, like I've already spent years playing those things, so they have to do something to make them fresh. So we'll see how that goes. But this season is great. I really do enjoy the altars and the way they play, how you can go in there for a short period of time, or you can spend hours in there and just grind to your heart's content in a somewhat engaging setup. Some of the encounters are poorly tuned, like they're like way over tuned, and I think that you die sometimes in unavoidable ways that's a little bit frustrating, but again, it is what it is. They had to find something that could push the more advanced players, but also allow some of the easier players to get in there and enjoy this crazy, hectic feeling like they're being pressured in a normal activity that would normally put you to sleep. And then with the Spire, it's nice and quick. It's very well paced. There's not a whole lot of unavoidable death, other than just, like not getting your jump properly, or you miss one of the doors and catch the side of one of the moving pillars or moving sensors. Little stuff like that is kind of annoying when you die to some of those things. A little bit of physics deaths, especially with the elevators. The elevators basically can one-shot you to like one health if you're not careful. But there is a lot of little secrets, and I enjoy those type of little mini puzzles, and I hope they continue to expand on that this season and not just let those secret chests be the only two secret chests. And those attunements, I hope they're really, really engaging and not just like go do this quest, get attuned, and then go back into the Spire and pick up the card. That would be kind of boring, but hopefully they find a way to make that nice and like engaging. Other than that, though, my overall opinion of this season is pretty good. I've seen people giving it like a 7 out of 10. I would probably give it, if it goes the way that I think it's going to go, probably like an 8.5, almost 9 out of 10, just because of the level of enjoyment I had grinding through that ritual table. Normally, I don't finish the full ritual table unless it just happens to be done as I'm going through and finishing other achievements, like other triumphs and things. I really ever just grind the ritual table like that. The last time I did that was Season of the Haunted, because I was trying to get the red borders. As you would grind through that and reset, you were getting that additional progress to get those seasonal drops that you could spend in the ritual table to then unlock more things going forward, back when they had the war mine style setup where you would unlock nodes and those nodes would do things that would help progress each week. So that was actually useful. When you would reset the Season of the Haunted vendor, you would get more of those for another reset. And unfortunately, this time around, the reset, it doesn't give you much. It just gives you more keys and some materials. So very disappointing there. Nice ship, like one of my viewers mentioned that it really does look cool, and it does. I like it. I have it on right now because it does look nice, and I'll wear it for the season. But overall, it's going to be a good season. I can tell it's going to be good. Now we'll have to see how hard Crota's End's going to be. Crota's End is supposed to be, turned up to 11 difficulty wise. I hope they do it the right way and not just like make you take a bunch of extra damage unavoidably because of some of the mechanics, or make it to where like if one person fails to do one of their jobs that everybody is like done and there's no way to recover from that. Make like a bunch of overlapping mechanics, for example. There's always that one person in a 6-man LFG who just cannot handle anything but ad clear. And so let's hope that they don't do a situation like they did in Vault of Glass, where everybody had to know how to do pretty much everything to complete the encounter properly. And let's hope that you can carry one or two people even with the extra difficulty out there, because I don't mind it being like turned up to 11 difficulty wise, but if I perform well enough, I can bring somebody on my back, or maybe two people on my back, to finish the encounter. That's perfectly okay with me. But if it's to the point where like I could be doing 100% perfect every single time and making very little mistakes, to, almost or none mistakes, like there is like moments where I hit my stride and I'm just like in the zone, and I just really do everything exactly how it needs to be done with a certain timing because I remember the exact timing and I'm ready at the door when things come out, and I'm doing my job just to a T, and then somebody else keeps failing and causing us to wipe because it gets very frustrating when you maintain that for like 8, 9, 10 hours and you have very little dips in performance during that time and you still don't get the encounter done because people just refuse to learn or are just struggle or just aren't there yet and they don't even need to be trying to be in the raid 1 encounter, day 1 encounter in the first place. Like some people just need to recognize like, hey, this is really tough after a few hours of me failing over and over and over again. Maybe I should step out and let somebody else take my spot here. There's a good group, see if they can get it done. But some people just really want it, and I also applaud those people who continue to play through their struggles. The only thing is that they have to learn and get better in that moment, and if they're not learning and getting better and they hit a wall, it's best to let the other people try to find somebody to get that done. And some people are too nice to say, hey man, you're just not, you just don't have it. Let's find somebody else, which is fair as well. So, anyways, great season so far. Looking forward to getting that Crota gear again. They did do a good job with bringing back the really nice looking gear that everybody talked about from season 1. Yeah, it's a reused asset from the Destiny 1 version of Crota. Yeah, it's also a reused asset, but that gear looks really cool, and I'm really going to enjoy having it back. It always sucks to lose things when you transition from D1 to D2, so it's going to be really nice to have that gear. And for you guys too, like if you have any memories from D1 or anything that you're looking forward to this season, go ahead and throw it in the comments too. That way we can talk about it and just kind of go over some additional things that maybe I'll cover, things in the lore, things of that nature. If you have anything that you'd like me to cover, just let me know. Big thanks again to all of my new subscribers. We're now over 400 subscribers and going. And so, looking forward to hitting that 1,000 subscriber mark, so that way the channel can actually become like a proper YouTube channel, and everything that comes with a proper YouTube channel will be available to us. But I really appreciate the 400 or so subscribers that I have now. Everybody's been sticking with me through the new guys, through the new season, even though Destiny was in a pretty down time. I think this season and the momentum from the reveal, the newer things that are coming out in the final shape, that kind of momentum is going to start back up again, and it's kind of started back on a positive note. I think I've seen a lot of good sentiment around this season, so it's looking brighter for Destiny already, which is great. I was hoping that we didn't have like a really dull season this season and we had to just slog through it. And so I'm excited about making videos for this season again. I'm excited about, again, meeting new members of the community, getting new viewers, and I appreciate everybody. I'll see you guys in the next one.